The transfer portal has opened in college basketball and has already become a point of contention in America, with players who are in the Sweet 16 actively leaving. Now, Baylor last year and the year before that, picking up senior guards, or BYU or Arizona. We have seen Big 12 schools conquer the transfer portal. LJ Cryer, who is such a strong piece for the Houston Cougars, came from Baylor via the transfer portal. And with it being open now, the Big 12 can take advantage. Who are the teams on the radar to make the biggest splashes in the transfer portal? And even before we get there, Cam, is the portal going too far with guys who are in the Sweet 16, like Justin Pippen, Scottie Pippen's son, already jumping ship?
Yeah, I do hate the structure for the portal in both basketball and football, to be honest with you, as football does it during bowl season. I think there's a way to do that where you do it in basketball after the NCAA tournament. Like, in football, you're backed up against the start of a semester. In basketball, you're not. So I don't see any reason why we need to be doing that during the tournament. And we saw that a bunch last year with teams like not accepting invites to the NIT because they didn't know how many players they were going to have and what they were going to need to do recruiting wise. So I hate that personally. And in terms of Big 12 teams, I mean, maybe there's a reason you have me on here, Drake, because you can't look much farther than Baylor because of how much how much stock they've put into the transfer portal the last couple of years. And maybe as a direct result of that, how much you're going to need to replace again. Like, this was a disappointing season for Baylor as a team that started in the top 10. At Kansas, obviously preseason number 1, falling in the first round as a 7 seed. Like, those are two huge.
Hunter Dickinson, by the way, transfer portal.
Yes. I was going to say 2 huge disappointments that built a lot of their team and their hype this year around the transfer portal. Kansas did it with Dickinson came in the year before, but guys like Zeke Mayo and ones like that, you looked at the transfer portal haul from Kansas, even though they were coming off a down year, and you said that's the preseason number 1. You looked at the Baylor team that replaced 4 or 5 starters. They obviously brought in a couple real high impact freshmen and 2 all ACC guys from the transfer portal. They're number 8. And so that's how we're judging teams now, not based off what they did last year, but by who they brought in the transfer portal. So I obviously look at Baylor and Kansas as 2 big players in that. Iowa State, I find to be a really interesting one because they're not one that has really found their success in the transfer portal. They've done it the old-fashioned way. They don't have endless NIL pockets, but they've identified good, undervalued high school talent and have made them into good college basketball players. And the way this season ended wasn't great for Iowa State, but they looked like they could have been a Final Four team for, 75-80% of this season. Yeah. And so I'm wondering, do they feel they need a portal addition or 2 to get over the top? And if so, how are they looking at the portal? Baylor's become a player that can go out and get big time players from programs like Duke and Miami and in Georgetown and Arizona and places like that. But is Iowa State going to focus on some more mid-majors and still get development that way? Those are the teams that I'm looking at personally. But Baylor is obviously the team I know the best. They're going to have to dip into the portal hard, which they've done each of the last few years. And the results have not been what they should be.
Yeah. The team that I have circled over and over for most things in the Big 12 has been BYU. That's no surprise. They are number 1 right now. Reason being, it's why we talk about Kentucky in college basketball most years and Alabama in football. The best team is who you give the most coverage typically because that's who's hot. BYU in football and basketball combined have won the most games in the Big 12. Just their second year here after being a mid-major. Yeah. And now in the transfer portal, they have the owner of an NBA team and an NHL team, the same guy, helping give their NIL one of the craziest boosts in college basketball and even college football. Is BYU, and not to say this in a bad way, but they have an advantage that no one else in the Big 12 has right now when it comes to the portal and recruiting?
Probably, yeah. And we've already seen it, obviously, in the high school recruiting with the rumored numbers of what they're giving A.J. DeBonsa, the number 1 recruit in the country, Brockton, Massachusetts native. But I kind of thought this earlier this year before Baylor played BYU in Provo and the DeBonsa news was he had just committed. And so it was like, are we seeing a sleeping giant in BYU, specifically in basketball? But obviously this does pertain to football as well. do you remember that rumor a few years ago about the Baylor Mafia, like the Baptist Mafia,
Yes.
that was controlling the underground world and getting Baylor all these great players and great coaches and everything? That's probably what's actually happening above ground at BYU, right? Like they've got some very famous alums. They've got a huge national, international fan base, and they've got some very powerful alums that can throw a ton of money in there. You know, the owner of the Jazz and the hockey club, Danny Ainge, throwing money into this thing. Now Utah is trying. Literally, they fired their coach because they're like, why can't we do something like BYU is doing? So I wouldn't call it an unfair advantage in terms of how it's laid out in college football and basketball these days, but they certainly have an advantage that even some of the big state schools don't have. Like they have essentially a region of the country. You know, it's not the most populated region of the country, but they have a region. They have a religion at their fingertips. And that leads to some very powerful people with some really deep pockets that want to see these athletic programs do well. So yeah, BYU's got a distinct advantage that not even the Kansases of this conference have.
Yeah. One piece of that, and to add to it, is BYU has figured out that the better you are in athletics, and this goes for any school, for Baylor, for BYU, for Texas Tech, the better you are, higher admission numbers, more t-shirt sales, your logo is more popular, people know who you are as a university, and when your university represents a faith like BYU and the LDS Church, that only grows the message, the mission that you are putting out there. So for BYU, winning ultimately puts that mission in front of more and more people. So the more money you put into it, it becomes a mission field. Athletics does. And so for BYU to understand that, it's very dangerous for the rest of the Big 12. And dangerous is not a bad word there. Dangerous as in, if you're Arizona, it's dangerous that BYU could take over that recruiting base, could take over college basketball, the Big 12 in football, because of their commitment moving forward. Coming up, West Virginia, speaking of commitment, can we get a coach to commit, an athletic director to commit? Can we get something here, someone? West Virginia still doesn't have a basketball coach. This is Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the bracket breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
Today's show is brought to you by Supply House. As someone who just bought a house, Supply House has been huge. Getting the supplies you need from the site that makes it easy. Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Easy to use website with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400 plus top brands. You'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Do you need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support with industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Go to supplyhouse.com.